My name is Gabrielle Tierney. I was born in 1981 in the city of Derry, which is in Northern Ireland. Growing up in Derry was I think, a really unique experience. I live essentially in a city, but it's a very small city, so it's more like village life on a bigger scale. Everybody knows everybody, and it's a very close-knit community. But of course there were tensions growing up because of the conflict within Northern Ireland between the Catholics and Protestants. My family were Catholic, and we lived in a Catholic area, and a lot of the violence that took place in Northern Ireland took place in Derry, and that's where it actually started. A lot of the violence from the IRA campaign and the subsequent violence in the UVF was carried out in the streets of Derry and Belfast. So very often we would have our bridges cut off, and we couldn't travel places because there was bomb scares. Every night on the news there was news of a new killing. Whenever I was 9 years old, I remember being up the town with my friend Marianne, and we were walking down the street from the Diamond, which is the very top of one of the main streets in Derry. We're walking down, and we looked down the street, and there's a guy running, and he had like a hoodie on and his face covered, and he was running up the street. He's looking very menacing. And then we heard this almighty boom, and it was so loud I couldn't believe it. And it wasn't a bomb, it was a gunshot, and he had shot a soldier in the face. I remember there was blood everywhere. So then when I later moved to London, and there was bombs happening here on the 7th of July, everybody didn't want to get on tubes, and it didn't faze me at all because I had grown up with it. So my experience of Derry, growing up in Derry, made me the person I am, I think. Very philosophical about life, and also very aware of how political issues can manifest in violence. Many centuries ago, Ireland was colonised by England. In fact, I think we were the first colony. Of course, then England went on to colonise most of the world, but we were one of the first. So for over 800 years they've been present in our land, and it was obviously a very unfair system. They came over and took our land, took the best land, and subjugated us quite a lot. And then they kind of, we reclaimed a bit of independence. I think it was around 1921 where we signed an agreement that we would get back our independence. However, there was a clause made in that agreement which really made history for Northern Ireland, insofar as it separated Northern Ireland from the rest of the island, and that had never been done before 1921. And the reason that they did this is because there was such a high Protestant population in the north of Ireland that said to England, if you leave us here, they're going to terrorise us, so you've got to keep us connected to you, and we'll pledge our loyalty. So they said that we'll keep Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom. And of course the Catholics, my family, within Northern Ireland were very upset about that, because the inequalities continued. So throughout the years we didn't have access to housing, access to jobs. It was very kind of economically unfair. And in terms of our kind of civil rights and everything, we didn't have the right to vote properly. I mean, it was really hard times for Catholics in Northern Ireland. In 1972, on the 30th of January in Derry, was one of the biggest massacres we've ever had, which was Bloody Sunday. And that was such a turning point in Derry's history, because it was unarmed civilians that were shot that day, and the whole world was taken aback at how unfair it was what happened. And that, more than any other event, galvanised the IRA. It made them popular. It apparently, I mean, I hear that other generations talking about there were queues outside bars in Derry, bars that were known to be recruitment points for the IRA, and there was literally queues at the door because people were so angry that they tried to protest peacefully in order to achieve their aims, and they'd been shot in the street just holding a placard. They thought there has to be another way that we achieve our freedom. And so that was a big turning point for Irish politics, and that happened in Derry. And so that's what gave rise to the IRA. On the 30th of January 1972, thousands of people congregated in Cregan in Derry to march basically for civil rights. And it was meant to be a very sort of positive, optimistic day, and people feeling really good about it, which sort of further saddens the story. And when they marched down from the top of the hill, which is Cregan, and right into the city centre towards the Bogside area, because it's now famously known as the Bogside Massacre, that's when they met with the British Army, and the British Army opened fire on these civilians who were unarmed and simply protesting that day for their rights. There are some really famous scenes now where you see priests waving handkerchiefs that are blood stained, sort of saying, you know, surrender and peace and don't be shooting on us, and but that was ignored, and they continued to kind of spray bullets on people. Many people were injured. I think 12 died that day, and another one died the next day from sustained injuries, or either 13 died and then another one. And they were, a short report was done after that said these people deserved to be killed, that they were doing, you know, they were illegally protesting, and that many of them were armed, which everybody in Derry knew to be false. And this really allowed feelings of hatred towards the British government to fester in Derry for many, many years, and it was felt that no one could move on from that horrible day without a healing process and some honesty and truth. So they launched a massive inquiry into Bloody Sunday, and it took years and years and years. It cost the British government millions upon millions to do it. And then in this year, 2010, they released the findings of that report, and it was an amazing day in Derry. All of it was filmed all over the world. It was a really historical day, and my friend Jeananne Craig, who's from Derry, was the first journalist on the scene, and everybody was waiting at the Guildhall, which is the centre point, the city town hall in Derry, waiting for the families to come back with the news of the report. And the cars all drove up, and there are thousands of people in the square waiting with bated breath to say, what did this report say? And before we even got to hear what it was, a window was rolled down and a hand came out and did a thumbs up, and thousands of people cheered, you know, throughout the square, and everybody was just, it was one of the most, you know, happiest days in sort of Derry's history, I think. Everybody was very emotional, even people who didn't lose family members that day, because I think we all lost something in Bloody Sunday, even the people that weren't alive at that time, because it's a scar that's kind of embedded into Derry people and into our psyche and our consciousness. So finally now those people can be put to rest and know that their names have been cleared, which is a great thing. And after that, David Cameron released a public apology on behalf of the British government, which in itself is a marvel, because, you know, the British government has yet to apologise for slavery, but yet they've apologised for this, so that was a great achievement. I don't think Derry and London could be more different if they tried, and this is why I love both of them, actually, because I get the best of both worlds. I've got this little town in Derry which everybody knows your name, and you can't move for saying hello to people when you go into town, and there's a real sense of community. And in these days when this, you know, the weather's really bad, you've got neighbours checking on neighbours, and it's a lovely way to be. It's a lovely safe place to grow up, in a way. And then you come to London, and it doesn't have that sense of community, but it's got this amazing wealth of culture, and you meet people from all over the world, and just living in London you get to learn, and obviously you've got access to amazing opportunities. So they're two very different places, but both have great advantages, and if you can straddle both those worlds, you gain a lot.